All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Deschamps, National Distribution Manager for Palais Gourmet. It's great to have you with us. We're here with Chef Calogero. Chef, this is your third webinar. So thanks a lot for organizing all of this. I know it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort in advance, so we appreciate it. Chef Calogero was the executive pastry chef at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City for 13 years. He was part of the opening team for the Ritz-Carlton, New York, and the Mandarin Oriental, New York. Having worked in New York City as a major pastry chef, Chef Calogero has served, has created pastries and desserts for some people you might know, some presidents from around the world, because they would come in for the United Nations, but as well as presidents here in the United States.
All sorts of people.
All sorts of people.
All sorts of people.
We have a lot of people joining us today, a huge variety in people attending. So we have folks at distributors, we have people that run gelaterias, we have folks that run restaurants. So big variety of people, and we do our best to keep our presentations digestible for a lot of people with different kinds of backgrounds. So with that, thanks for joining us. This will go about 45 or 50 minutes or so, and I will share the recipe that Chef Calogero will be talking about, and I'll be sharing some other things as well within a day or two. So with that, let's get started.
Great,
Thank you, Chef.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you guys today. It's springtime. The warmer days are coming, and gelato is definitely a desirable item to have during the warm month to come. Today, we're going to spend the next 45 minutes to 50 minutes, as Eric just mentioned, talking about gelato and how to make an amazing gelato, what to look out for, some tips, some key things to pay attention to when you're making it. And this is all in an effort to ensure that you guys have the proper information to recreate a wonderful, amazing gelato in your own kitchens, in your own venues, in your own operations. Sugar serves the purpose of sweetening our product, sweetening our gelato, sweetening desserts, but it also serves the purpose of acting as an antifreeze. Not to get confused with antifreeze in your car, in your vehicle, it has nothing to do with antifreeze in your vehicle. We're talking about anti-freezing power, which basically translates into sugar being a substance that helps lower the temperature of your liquid. It reduces the freezing point, okay? So sugar is a key ingredient in that aspect because it ensures that your final texture of your ice cream will be creamy, will be soft, and will be desirable on your palate. The only downfall about sugar that I would point out as a chef is that I personally don't like sugar. I personally don't like desserts that are too sweet. So I don't want to use too much sugar in an effort to make my ice cream creamy and making it antifreeze, so to speak. So I don't want my ice cream to be too sweet. Therefore, I'm going to take advantage of some other sugars, which we're going to talk about very briefly. What are some of the other ingredients that play a supporting role in a gelato recipe? Think of them as supporting actors in a movie. They are the ones who make the protagonist shine. They are the ones who really fill in the blanks and make sure that the whole experience of the movie is desirable and enjoyable, okay? So who are the supporting actors? Who are the supporting ingredients? They are fat. Fat is definitely an important ingredient that will support everything else in the recipe. It is protein. Protein will help capture the air. It will help the final texture. Protein is very important, and also stabilizers and emulsifiers, okay? Those are key ingredients in making sure our final product is desirable, has a creamy texture, is enjoyable in 1 or 2 days, or if you're making gelato in pre-packaged and you want to sell it in a retail setting, that it stays properly homogeneous and in great stability and texture. Okay, so the stabilizers and emulsifiers will act to that effect. Okay, so it's important to understand that. What do these ingredients all have to do? They have to stay in line. They have to do their role and they have to do their part. Just like a football game, a soccer game, you have different players and everybody has a role to play. what are the ideal parameters of a gelato? The parameters of sugar, for example, in gelato are 18 to 20% total content of sugar in your gelato base. Why is that important? Because if it's too little or too much, for example, if it's too little, your ice cream will get too hard and it will freeze solid and it will be very hard. If it's too much, it will be shiny, it will be soupy, it will not freeze properly because there's too much sugar in it. Sugar is acting as an antifreeze. It has an anti-freezing power, okay? Aside from the fact that it will give you flavor and sweetness, okay? Fat content. Even though we know that gelato has less fat than the traditional American ice cream, the parameters for gelato are 5 to 8% tops. 5 to 8% of total fat in a gelato recipe, okay? Some other key players in this particular recipes are definitely the parameters of non-fat milk solids, okay? What are non-fat milk solids? They're basically the opposite of water. Anything else that's solid, okay? If I mentioned earlier that 85% of milk is water, what's the other 15%? It's solid. Our body's made out of water and solids, okay? And most of the stuff around us is made out of water and solid. So it's important to understand how much solids is in a gelato recipe. So the parameter for non-fat milk solids will have to be between 7 and 12% total, okay? Now, we're introducing all these solids into our gelato mix. What's the total parameter of the total solids? I'll give you the numbers. The number is 36 to 38% of total solids in your gelato recipe. Solids. What does it mean? What exactly is solids? Let me give you an analogy. The solids will act as building blocks. They are like gravel or pebbles in cement, okay? When you've seen people pour sidewalks and cement, so to speak, the ones we walk on, there's a great chance there's some rocks and pebbles in between. This will prevent the cement from cracking Same thing with the solids in the gelato. It will help the structure. It will help the solid. It will help the final gelato to stay solid, creamy, and not soupy, okay? Now, the key is this. If you put too many solids, then the sensation could potentially be grainy. It will taste grainy on your palate, and it's not very desirable. That's why it's important to have the right amount, the right parameter of solids. So now we kind of like understand what the parameters are of the different ingredients. So it's important for us to respect that and to use a proper recipe that will reflect that. The recipe that we're making here today is a white neutral base gelato, which ultimately has a very balanced parameters of the different ingredients that we just talked about. It allows you to make one base, keep it on hand, and introduce different flavors into it as you're going along throughout your production. We're going to mix one recipe here right now, 1,000 grams or 1 liter of whole milk. Okay. We're going to introduce a little bit of fat, which means a little bit of heavy cream. Okay. The reason why is because I like to add just a tiny bit of heavy cream, and you're going to see in proportion how much we are talking about. Excuse me. I am actually doubling the recipe. So here we are. It's this much heavy cream to this much milk, okay? In this particular recipe, it's just the right amount of extra fat that will aid in the balancing of this recipe, okay? We have the whole milk, we have heavy cream, we have the sugar, which is the key ingredient we just spoke about, adding the sweetening and the anti-freezing. And it's important to also make a note of this. even though sugar is an antifreezing, it has an antifreezing power, it has an antifreezing effect to the final base. I don't like to use a lot of sugar. As a chef, I don't like sweet desserts. I don't like overly sweet desserts. I want my desserts to be flavorful and taste like the flavor that I am making, not necessarily sugar. So I am going to take advantage of different types of sugar, they're called technical sugars, okay? Sugar is the benchmark of all sugars. It is measured in on a scale, and it basically has 100 points of sweetening power and 100 points of antifreezing power. Then there are technical sugars, and the technical sugars are dextrose, invert sugar, lactose, honey, fructose, glucose syrup, glucose powder, maltose, sorbitol, and maltodextrin. These are all technical sugars that we may find in different types of food that we consume day in and day out, okay? What's so special about those sugars? Some of those sugars have a higher sweetening point. They are much sweeter than sugar, and some of them are less sweeter than sugar, okay? Some of them have an antifreezing power that's higher, and some of them have an antifreezing power that's lower than sugar. So because I don't like my desserts to be sweet, I like to take advantage of a sugar that is a little bit less sweet. In this case, I'm going to use dextrose sugar, which is 25% less sweet than regular granulated sugar. So this sugar is less sweet. It also has an antifreezing power, which is slightly higher. So which means that it will keep my texture nice and smooth, nice and creamy throughout the process. So this is my friend. I definitely want to take advantage of him, and I want to take out some of my regular sugar. So I'm using dextrose, which is a simple sugar anyhow. The other ingredients that we mentioned earlier is proteins and stabilizers and emulsifiers. This is something called a semi-finished base to make gelato. It's basically a composition, a pre-mixed composition of different types of technical sugars that include stabilizers and emulsifiers. Mostly stabilizers and emulsifiers are vegetable-based or root-based. So the stabilizers and emulsifiers are very, very important. How is the stabilizer and emulsifier relate to the traditional way of making gelato? The traditional way of making gelato, the way I was taught, was by using egg yolks. Oftentimes, we all have recipes that call to make an anglaise. You're basically making you're heating up some cream and some milk, some sugar, and you're introducing egg yolks, okay? The egg yolks basically act as an emulsifier. They contain lecithin. Lecithin is an emulsifier which will help the ice cream stay smooth and creamy and homogeneous. It combines the waters and the fats, the fat molecule, and it lends itself a nice texture in the overall experience. So lecithin is important. It is found in egg yolks, and many of us use recipes that contain egg yolks. The only downfall that I would point out, and that comes to my mind today is that egg yolks could pose themselves with some downfalls, so to speak. There could be a sanitary hazard. Let's imagine we make an ice cream, a strawberry gelato or a cherry gelato, and our base contains egg yolks. What's going to happen is you're going to have this beautiful fresh fruit, and you're going to have an egg undertone. You're going to have the egg flavor underneath it. Okay. If you're making a beautiful Amarena cherry gelato and your ice cream base has egg yolks in it, there's always going to be that little bit of egg in it. If I'm having a fruit gelato, to me, that's not very desirable. That's just my opinion. But if you're making a caramel ice cream, let's say a hazelnut gelato or a chocolate gelato, or a zabayon gelato, the egg yolk will lend itself very nicely and probably enhance the overall experience. Probably make it a little bit heavier too, though, just to make a note of it. So here we are, we're making our white base. It's always important to combine the dry ingredients first. I have my granulated sugar, I have my dextrose, my good friend that's less sweet, and I'm adding my stabilizers and emulsifiers, my milk powders that are pre-measured in this form right here. In this particular instance, we're using gel pan 100 cold. It's a 100 dosage for each liter of milk. And this is a very good balance and proportion of different ingredients without individually measuring out different stabilizers and emulsifiers, okay? So this is a safe way of doing it. It eliminates the room of making error. It's important to mix this very well, okay? You want to make sure that there is no lumps, okay? I highly recommend that you measure things out separately in the beginning, especially. If you're more experienced, you can use everything on the same scale and just add your ingredients onto the scale. Also, I like to point out, I highly suggest you use a digital scale, and I also highly suggest you use a grams and kilograms scale. The total amount of stabilizers and emulsifiers in the whole recipe of 1 liter should not exceed 0.5%. That translates into 5 grams for this recipe, which is a total of 1,430 grams. 1,430 grams. You should not be putting more than 5 grams of stabilizers and emulsifiers. What happens if I add 2 extra grams of stabilizers and emulsifiers? By adding 2 extra grams, you're increasing stabilizers and emulsifiers by 40%. What is 40% in something like this? It basically means this. Let's say you're buying this for $100. Let's say this costs $100 and you end up dishing out $140. You just gave away $40. $40 is a big difference. 40% makes a big difference in your overall recipe. That is why it's important to either pay attention if you're scaling everything out individually, or take advantage of a base like a 100 where everything is already pre-measured and it's just easier and less room for error. I'm agitating it, I'm mixing it well, I'm adding my heavy cream, okay? And there we are. I usually measure out my liquids first, and I add my dry ingredients on top. This will prevent my dry ingredients from getting stuck on the bottom of this particular vessel. Okay, set this base aside and let it mature. They call it mature. What does that mean? It basically means you're putting this aside for future use. You should let it rest for at least 2 to 8 hours before you use it in your batch freezer. The best way that I recommend you should go about this is making a bigger batch, make the amount that is necessary for your production, and keep it in the refrigerator for the following day. It's best to let it mature overnight. What happens when it's maturing overnight? It's basically coagulating and the liquid is coagulating. The stabilizers and emulsifiers are working. They're absorbing the water, which will in return be able to capture more air. Okay, it also gives a chance for the sugars and all the dry ingredients to dissolve, fully dissolve, so we don't have any graininess or anything like that in our final gelato. So maturing, letting it rest is extremely important. It's important to mix it. Okay, it's important to really give it a nice mix, because there always tends to be some dry particles that sink to the very bottom, and also the fat, like the heavy cream, floats to the top. So you want to make sure everything is homogeneous to some degree and mixed properly. Okay. So I'm going to be taking out of my big batch 2.5 liters of milk. Okay, here we are. We're going to make the vanilla. It's 2.5. So when we add a flavor to our base, it's very important to understand the dosage of each particular flavor. Some flavors are stronger, some are less intense. Okay, it's important to note that our vanilla bean paste, for example, which is rich in vanilla beans, Madagascar vanilla beans, is a high dosage. It means it's very strong. So the dosage here is between 40 to 50 grams for 1 liter of total mix. So I'm going to add my vanilla bean paste to the mix. Okay, and then you basically take, if I did 2,500 grams, which translates to or equates to 2.5 times 50 grams in this case, which will equal to 125 grams. So I just added 125 grams of vanilla bean paste in this. If you prefer the flavor to be less intense, you put a little bit less, but you always have to multiply it by the amount of liquid base. I want to make sure before I put my base in that it's properly sealed, okay? You want to make sure the door is closed and the spout is also closed, okay? We put this on gelato on spin, and this is doing its job. So the question is, Eric, how long can you keep it?
Keep the base in the refrigerator.
Yeah, that's a great question. How long can you keep the base once you make a big batch? Up to 3 days. 72 hours is ideal. Is just fine. Any more time than that, then the ingredients that are inside, the stabilizers and the emulsifiers and the protein, they start to break down, which will have an inverse effect, and the texture will be soupy, loosey, and it will not capture a lot of the right amount of air. So 3 days is fine. We put this on gelato on spin, and this is doing its job as we speak. So the question is, Eric, how long can you keep it?
Keep the base in the refrigerator.
Yeah, that's a great question. How long can you keep the base once you make a big batch? Up to 3 days. 72 hours is ideal. Is just fine. Any more time than that, then the ingredients that are inside, the stabilizers and the emulsifiers and the protein, they start to break down, which will have an inverse effect, and the texture will be soupy, loosey, and it will not capture a lot of the right amount of air. So 3 days is fine. Good. And if you have any other questions, ask the questions and we'll answer them as we go along. Okay, that's a good question.
Another question for you, Chef, actually.
Yes.
Terry is asking, so you do not pasteurize during this process?
Okay, great question. In this particular demonstration, we're talking about one base and one process and one method of doing gelato. Okay, one method. And the focus is on doing a cold process, well-balanced gelato recipe. Is it necessary to pasteurize this base? Think about it. I'm using milk that's already pasteurized. I'm using heavy cream that's already pasteurized. I'm not introducing any egg yolks into it. So my ingredients are already pasteurized. My stabilizers and emulsifiers that are prepackaged in something like this, they are meant to dissolve in a cold process liquid, which means the ingredients that are in this particular product, they don't need to be heated up. If I was to use something that's a hot process, that means there's something inside here that needs to be heated in order for it to be effective, in order for it to dissolve, in order for it to function. In the cold process application, as we're doing right now, it is not necessary, okay? If you wish to heat it up, you can always heat it up if you wish to, but it's not necessary whatsoever. Let's talk about this machine for a second. It's important for an ice cream or a gelato to freeze quickly. Why is that? Because it ensures that the crystals, that the water, let's put it this way, that the water that's in our mix is transformed into small, tiny ice crystals, which means a quick freeze, a very cold temperature quickly, it creates smaller ice crystals, which in turn will result in a gelato that's smoother, that's more palatable, which is structurally more compact, and is a better experience overall, small ice crystals. If the machine was to freeze the product slowly, and it would take forever, it would most likely create larger ice crystals. Larger ice crystal will translate into a gelato that's going to become unstable. It will collapse because if those large ice crystals begin to melt, they create bigger pockets of liquid. Think of a Swiss cheese, pockets of holes, and that will implode the ice cream. So the overall texture of the gelato will be compromised, the experience will be compromised. So you definitely want to make sure that your ice cream machine works as it should be. It should work quickly and in order to form small ice crystals.
One question from Shanna. What is the best substitute for dairy-free gelato instead of milk and cream?
Okay, that's a great question. So vegan The vegan market is exploding. More and more people are turning to a vegan alternative. They enjoy vegan products. So there is solutions out there. You have soy milk, you have rice milk, cashew milk, almond milk, oat milk. Me personally, I'm a fan of oat milk. And why is that? I'll tell you why. Soy milk, there's a stigma about soy. Soy. That's why I'm like, let me shy away from soy. It also leaves a flavor, a certain flavor. Rice milk is very liquidy and it's sweet, okay? Almond milk, let's say someone is allergic to nuts now. Now I introduce an obstacle in my final base that has almonds inside. So I came to the conclusion that I really prefer oat milk. Oat milk comes in different forms, full fat and less fat, so to speak. Truthfully, I prefer the full fat because it gives me the sensation of a creaminess as something that I very much enjoy in a wholesome gelato recipe. So my answer to you is there is options out there. I'm a fan of oat milk with full fat because the result will be texture-wise good and it's a clean taste. Once the machine is ready, or I know that it's ready, I want to make sure that I press extract. I'd like to give the machine a chance to push all the ice cream up to the front. Another thing I like to do is always make sure your pans are pre-chilled and frozen, okay? Another thing I like to do is a trick. I like to double insulate my pan. So when I extract my ice cream, there's an insulation there and it will keep the ice cream put and prevent it from sliding all over the place. So I'm putting 2 pans. I'm getting my handy dandy spatula. You want to have a solid spatula because this is a process where I'm taking gelato out. I always try to keep the rounded edge up in the front, and here I go. The rounded edge in the front, and I'm extracting. Okay. This is our vanilla bean. This is our vanilla bean base. So in this particular presentation that I have in mind, I like the final presentation to be a somewhat natural look. What does that mean? It basically means, as I call it, let's do the Smurfs or Hershey Kisses type of finish. I'm taking advantage of the grits of the machine. I'm not manipulating the ice cream very much. I'm just taking it out. I'm mounting it up over here. I'm placing it over here. Give it a chance to come out. Cut it, place it, and then just jiggle it, and it breaks the string, and then you just pull it apart, pull it away. 3.5 liters of liquid. 3.5 liters of liquid will yield 5 liters of total ice cream. That basically means there's going to be air incorporated in it. I just extracted my vanilla bean gelato. Here it is. At this point, the goal is that I'm not going to do anything else to it. I will leave it as is and give it the natural, I call it the little Smurf effect of little clouds of gelato. And now I'm going to put it in here. And I will explain why I put it in there in just a second. Let's decorate the vanilla bean ice cream. So this is the vanilla bean ice cream. Vanilla bean ice cream, you want to keep it as classy, as simple as you possibly can. If you have extra vanilla beans that you scraped out, I always try to save the pods, the beans, and dry them out and use them for decoration. And I put them over here. If you don't have vanilla beans, you can use chocolate cigarettes. You can use chocolate cigarettes or anything like that. Okay. We're going to introduce strawberry. So this is a strawberry variegato. It's a strawberry compote, strawberry compote. It has beautiful strawberry pieces inside. But the important thing about this is that once you add it with your ice cream, it will stay soft and creamy and it will not freeze up. So here we go. I have my variegato close to me. I put it on top. Extraction, here we go. So the key about this is that we're going to add we're going to introduce this in layers. So I'm extracting my base a little bit at a time, and I'm closing it. Open, shut. Okay. It's still cold in there. It's mixing. It's okay. This particular product, I'm going to add some. Okay. I'm going to continue with my extraction. If you make a large amount, it's good to add it in 2 layers, like 2 layers of strawberry. But in this case, I'm just going to add 1 because I'm going to do, it's a small amount, and you'll see why in just a second. I would, if I had a lot more, I would probably add another layer of strawberries now, and then add more ice cream on it because it's all in proportion. I'm going to do that. That's fine. Okay. I'm extracting. All right, perfect. Here we are. I'm going to pour this guy in and make sure it's closed. This is my mint. The previous base was white, mint, the body system, they complement each other. It's quite all right. This will save us a little bit of time as we go along too. If there was a nut inside or chocolate, obviously, I would wash it out in between. Or if there were like a fruit gelato with seeds inside, I would obviously wash it out. Okay, so I added variegato in this case. And the idea behind this is to do a strawberry shortcake, strawberries and cream. It's a good idea to have some sort of insulation, especially if I'm working over here. Okay, this is where your double pan comes in very handy because it keeps the ice cream put. So what I usually do is, this is a different decoration. We're going to do the wave. I call it the wave. So you always start off, I make up these names as I go, right? Good point is to bring this to a shape of a football. Okay, really bring it to a shape of a football. Okay, basically that. You're also making sure everything is even in texture. Now is a perfect time to clean the sides. It's the perfect time to do it right now. Also, it's very nice when if you're using a shallow pan like this, that you're away from the sides. It would be nicer if it's a little bit more fuller, but we did it, and that's that. In order to do the wave, there's a couple of things we need a spatula like this. Oh, this is a gelato spatula, metal. Okay, traditional serving spatula for gelato. I made my football shape. Now, what am I going to do? I want it to be a little bit smoother. So I'm taking my room temperature spatula, and if you look at it, what's happening? The spatula obviously is warm, and it's melting the surface of this ice cream and making it smoother. I'm ready to do my decoration. The idea behind this guy is, actually, I'm going to add some strawberries on top. That was the idea. So because it's a little bit soft, I'm going to put this back in the freezer to harden up. Because if I'm going to add my variegato now, it's going to get soft and they're going to infuse. I don't want that. I want a clean definition. So I'm putting this back in the freezer right now. Okay, so the idea is that this guy has formed a crust. I'm going to add my strawberries on top. And it's going to go all over. I know, but that's okay. I'm going to take, it's a little bit soft. I should have left it in the freezer a little longer. So now I'm taking my room temperature spatula. I want it to chill a little bit because when this is frozen, it will drag. If it's room temperature, it will cut right through it and make it shine, but I want it to drag just a bit. So I'm going to chill. I'm just going to chill the tip of it. You're going to see a little condensation over here, and that's exactly what I want. I position myself, and I'm going to go right in here. I'm jiggling. You always jiggle it once you want to release. And you let it go. At this point right now, I want to make sure I solidify it because I'm going to add other decorations in just a bit once it's solid. I want to work with something that's stable and solid. That's why I'm using my insulation. That's why I'm using my blast freezer. Like that. So over here, I have the strawberries and cream. I'm going to add maybe 1 strawberries over here. If I have a little cookie crumble, let's maybe think of strawberries and chocolate covered strawberries. This is a strawberry and cream. If you have some crumble cookies, shortbread cookies, you put that on top and you have a strawberry shortcake. But the important lesson over here is the variegato, okay? How we included the variegato. To recap, anytime you want to add some fruit jam on top, it's a good idea to put it back in the freezer to solidify the crust. Because if I'm going to add my room temperature compote variegato of strawberries on top, it's just going to fuse. It's not going to be a clean finish. So I want to make sure that this is solidifies. Let me show you some different types of variegato. It could be hazelnuts. It could be cocoa nips coated in chocolate. Amarena cherries, beautiful Amarena cherries, semi-candied, deep, dark, purplish in color. This is something else, a ginger variegato, similar to the strawberry. It's very, people love ginger, it goes well with yogurt. We have curls, little decorations that will enhance the overall visual appeal and the overall experience. So these are all variegati, different inclusions that we can either add in between or on top of our ice cream. What's the temperature of your showcase? The temperature of your showcase should be between 14 degrees Celsius to 12.5 degrees Celsius. That's the temperature of your showcase in your gelato showcase, which translates into 6.8 degrees Fahrenheit to 9.5 degrees Fahrenheit. What's the holding temperature of your ice cream if you're cleaning out your showcase, let's say at the end of the week or at the end of the night? Same temperature as your showcase. It's important to keep the ice cream at the same temperature to prevent it from creating crystals and melting and that sort of thing. It will keep the texture the same. So it's important to keep the same temperature. And one last thing, what's the temperature on this guy? It's minus 20 degrees Celsius, which translates to minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's super, super cold, but this will ensure that your ice cream is stable.
We have one question for you from Mark. Mark is asking, can you use fruit purees or concentrated fruit paste?
In this application for the strawberry, so this recipe, the recipe that I gave you works very well with fruit paste, something like this, okay? It works very well with something like this because it's 100 grams for 1 liter. I'm not introducing a lot of water. I'm not introducing a lot of moisture, which you would find in a puree. Puree is beautiful, it's nice. But remember, there's a lot of water in it too. Natural water because it's a puree. But it would be a different recipe if I'm using fresh puree, okay? In this particular case, I used a strawberry paste, which is beautiful with pieces of strawberries. It's a concentrate.
This was a great demo. Thank you so much, Chef, for all the information.
Sure, my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And keep in mind that Gelatech has everything that you need for your gelato needs, from bases to inclusions, variegatos.
Yeah.
And the best thing I think about Gelatech is that if you use Gelatech products, you get all of this expertise right here from our expert.
No, listen, we're here for you. As chefs, we are a resource to you. We are happy to share any information, knowledge, recipes with you guys. Your success is our success. As a chef, my goal is to share information and be on the technical side. I hope this was insightful and a little taste of gelato.
So that's it for today. I'll be in touch with an evaluation, the recipe, my contact information, and Chef Calogero's contact information. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you. Take care.